Welcome to the FMCG, guys. I'm your co-host, Daniel Torres. Hello, Efrain Rosario. How are you?
Good, Daniel. Good to be with you as always.
Excellent. We're managing recordings between holidays and work and everything, so I'm glad we're still keeping the machine on.
Absolutely. Well, this is the fun and challenge of summertime here in Europe.
Exactly. Hope you as a listener are also enjoying holidays. As you've seen on the show notes, we have an amazing guest for you today. Before we start the show, we wanted to remind you, if you haven't yet, to hit the subscribe button. So every episode you will receive automatically every Wednesday, and sometimes we do specials twice a week. If you haven't yet, if you could leave us a comment, a review on your favorite podcast player, that would be amazing as well. By the way, if you haven't noticed yet, we have now an updated website, which we think is more intuitive, faster loading times. I think it's prettier as well. And it includes a search tool. So whatever theme you want to look for, say retail media, for example, fashion, you just write whatever you want to look for, and you can find it automatically, whatever content you want to learn about. So let's go into the show, no, Efrain?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Daniel, I couldn't help but notice the writing utensil that you happen to have in your hand right now, and I think it's actually a clue as to who our guest is as well.
Exactly. You guys can't see us, but I'm holding the iconic BIC pen, which actually is my pen of choice and has been for a long time, probably since high school. So yeah, very excited today to have the CEO of BIC, Gonzalve Bich. I met him at Shop Talk in Vegas. We had a quick but very enjoyable chat, so that he's someone with an opinion and obviously with a very interesting scope. So we wanted to have him on the podcast. What do you think of BIC, Efrain? What is the first thing that comes to mind?
Well, I think first off, I guess it would have been very funny if instead of holding one of his the big crystal pens, you'd been holding one of their shavers. I don't know how I'd feel if you were shaving while we were recording this podcast, but BIC is one of those companies that's both iconic but also innovative as well. So I'm really excited to share our conversation with Gonzalve, with our audience, so they can also kind of get some insight into what they're both their history, but also what they're doing currently today in terms of innovating, but also his Gonzalve and BIC's vision of what the future will bring as well for FMCG.
So I'm the third generation CEO and family manager of the BIC business. So hopefully it's a brand that's been in your hands since childhood. Either you had the pens or a little bit, there's one, the crystal pen, still made, tens of millions of those. And we put them in hands of school children, office workers, and different people all over the world every day. I'm very privileged and honored to be stewarding our organization into its almost 80th year now, with operations all over the world and a little bit over 10,000 team members working passionately to bring simplicity and joy to everyday life of billions of people every day. One of the cool things about BIC is you physically touch our product every day. You get up in the morning, maybe you shave, and you shave with a BIC, I hope you shave with a BIC shaver. And then you go to work and you write with a BIC pen, and you come home and you're going to have a nice dinner with your wife and a glass of wine. You're going to light a candle with a BIC lighter. So really that daily interaction with consumers is one of the things that makes me very happy every day in what I do.
Yeah, which is something that when we've talked, we talk to people in consumer goods all the time here, and that's something that I think generates a lot of consensus, the fact that something that a lot of people like are working in this industry is like the tangibility and relatability of the products and the brands, that you live and breathe them up to some extent. And as I showed you before, I'm holding a BIC pen right now, which I promise I didn't prepare for this.
Yeah, I love getting WhatsApp messages from people I haven't seen in years. Like, I'm in my supermarket in the outskirts of Barcelona, and there's a Snoop display with the lighters, and oh my God, it's awesome. And they'll take like a selfie with them and Snoop. That's really fun.
Yeah. By the way, I love the promotion that one of the campaign that you're doing with Snoop Dogg and Willie Nelson, which are two artists that I've actually listened to quite a lot, each in their own right, and I love like how you put them together.
They're awesome, and they're good friends, so it's pretty cool.
And I'll give you the other side of that, Gonzalve, which is that I've been a Martha Stewart fan for as long as I've been married. My better half brought me to that side, so it's great to see you working with her as well.
She is a fabulous ambassador for the brand and one of the hardest working people I've ever seen.
And no Gonzalve, so you and me, Gonzalve, we met at Shop Talk in Vegas in the US. And interestingly, you were not one of the speakers or you were not doing a keynote. You were actually there to basically have your finger on the pulse on the industry trends. I'm curious to know, like, as a CEO, how do you combine that, like, grand vision, strategic thinking with actually, getting your hands dirty up to some extent?
In consumer goods, with what we do, everything has to begin with the consumer. And so if you're not out there in stores, if you're not out there talking to people, getting real live feedback and seeing how people interact with your brand, it's really tough to be relevant and understand, especially if you're talking about like cutting edge social media advertising campaigns. Those things, if you're not in the first 2-3 days, it's just a Me Too type thing and it's not going to work. So super important to me to budget my time accordingly. And I spend quite a bit of time every week, month, year, however you want to look at periodicity, spending time out there, but also looking at how other brands are doing things. And Shop Talk is one of those venues that's, an annual pilgrimage to understand who's doing what. You catch up with old ex-colleagues or friends from the industry, and they give you a pretty good sense of what's going on with consumers, whether that's from a shopper perspective, a trade marketing perspective, or even an innovation avenue. So really interesting stuff.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to hear you mention that, Gonzalve, in regards to, like you said, more of the informal interactions at those kinds of events. I tended to find the same thing at the Europe event they had this year as well, which is that I got as much out of those unplanned interactions, the interruptions, if you will, as I did even the planned sessions. So it's great to hear that we share that regard. You mentioned, obviously, like you said, going to conferences like Shop Talk and other industry events and having those interactions with other brands as one of the ways that you're kind of, in essence, making sure you have your finger on, what's happening. And, like you said, making sure that the brand remains relevant as long as it has, over its almost close to 80 years. Are there other things that you and your team are doing with regards to ensuring that the brand maintains its relevance in culture today?
We are consumers, so one of the things you ask yourself is, how am I interacting with other brands? But I mentioned it a second ago. I think that if you're not out in store on a regular basis, literally talking to consumers, you're missing a trick. There's parts of the world where that's easier than others, but I've been fortunate enough now with Google Translate, you can have a pretty good conversation with just about everybody in a couple of weeks now. Back to school is going to kick off in, let's call it half the world. The Northern Hemisphere is going to, and you'll see me out in stores, Walmart and stationary stores, and I'll go do some other stuff, talking to consumers in the aisle, understanding where are the pain points, what are they looking for, how are they shopping, what's most important. And for years, I've been talking to moms and dads as well, because that ratio is balancing itself out. But let's face it, it's still very often mom in the aisle carrying her two kids, fighting with the school list that Mrs. Smith has given her of tons of stuff to go buy. And she's always, telling me, like, Gonzalve, I see that orange packaging, I see the BIC logo, I trust it, I grew up with it, it stands for reliability, it stands for performance. Because in this always on world, one of the things that I think some people might forget is, because we're all about unboxing culture, and that's great, and there's something very special about that. But if you think about the BIC crystal pen that Daniel had a second ago, it's designed to last over 3,000 meters of writing. So if you're in, the 6th grade in school, that's going to last about a year if nobody nicks it from you or you lose it or whatever. But let's say and we designed the product to be just as good in that last page of writing as it was in that first page of writing. And so these real moments of truth for the consumer have to stick. And you want to get the feedback from people. I want to hear stuff like, well, Gonzalve, I was writing this long essay, and at the end of page 17, you might ask why that person wrote 17 pages, but whatever. I had a little bit of pain in my wrist. Good feedback point. I'm going to bring that back to the innovation guys and see if we can't redesign the grip a little. So getting out there, super important. And then spending time on, the world of the internet and all that can mean. So the different portals and reading the comments that people are posting on your advertising. Hey, I love this. We make a lot of different colors for our lighters. I love the comments of people. There's a big debate about, we have a color called plum. My wife says I would call it purple because I'm not sophisticated, but let's call it plum. And there's the plum lovers and the plum haters. And then there's the people that are just confused about why we're having a conversation about plum. But that's so amazing in our business to understand the power and passion for color as you're designing next year's series and sets. So all that together really helps us keep the finger on the pulse of what people want and need.
And how have you managed to keep this, like if we concentrate it all in the last 25 years, obviously BIC, if I think 25 years ago, I was probably at primary school, and BIC is still very relevant. How have you managed that?
I think it has to start with the product, right? So you start by still making amazing products that people want and need every day. And that can be very different things because we make products that are very simple and very affordable and that billions of people use every day. And then we make other products that are hyper premium with all sorts of advanced features and stuff. So if you think about our shaving range of products, in shaving, we still make the single blade product that we started our shaving business with. And today we have 5+1 blade, super advanced floating heads for people who want the closest shave. And then this year we launched a new technology that allows for ever greater rinseability. I mean, we all remember our dads banging shavers on the side of the porcelain bowl or the metal bowl to get some of the hair out between the blades. We've solved that by redesigning the head. So we really have those gamuts, and you want to make sure that you're offering all those things. Stay true with the brand. Guys like Willie and Snoop and French rugby players and rugby players in South Africa and bicycle people in Latin America. I mean, we do all sorts of partnerships and stuff, but making sure that all of your brand messaging is true to your brand ethos, that every experience with the product is one that resonates positively with the consumer, and that you're innovating by creating products and services that people want every day and that they need.
Yeah. And when you think about like internally, you talked about innovation and so on, but we all know that big companies can become very bureaucratic and just become something that works on the day-to-day. And that's it, because it works and it generates cash flow. But how do you foster innovation among the ranks? Because you have people like 3, 4, 5 levels below you that are responsible for innovation up to an extent.
I think it starts with passion. So if you have people that are really passionate about your brand, and we all can list out brands that we're all passionate about. I'm passionate about the BIC brand and other brands as well. Then you get passionate about solving problems or creating solutions that people want. If you get up in the morning saying, hey, how can I make this lighter a little bit better for the candle user or the barbecue user? When you go into that meeting, you're not phoning it in, I think is what you were alluding to, or just going through the motions. You're really going to push the boundaries and ask the product, can we make this a little bit more like that? Can we solve this problem over here? And that's at the beginning of it. You have to use the product and then really get involved in the industry and what people are trying to do. When we got into the temporary tattoo business, I spent a couple of years going to tattoo parlors, putting on, you don't want to know how many temporary tattoos I had over all those years before we acquired the Inkbox business. And now that Inkbox is part of the BIC ecosystem, I mean, I'm constantly trying on new designs, new formats, the next generation of tattoos with different features and benefits for consumers. I love this. That's the passion that will drive that innovation that you're seeking and talking about.
It's great to hear you mention, like you said, the role of passion with regards to being able to drive innovation throughout not just the company, but the culture of BIC itself. I'm curious to understand, what role has that innovation and technology, generally speaking, played in product design for you all?
We don't see them as a linear process. It's more an ecosystem. So the design teams are part and parcel of the innovation group. So the way we organize ourselves is around either research fields or problems to solve. And you have to have not only the product designers in there, we have to have the mechanical engineers, the machine guys, all built in. It's one thing to say, okay, let's think about this pen that we want to make, and we're going to make it like this and like that. But if the guy the designer says to you, well, that's just going to be ugly, and people aren't going to be inspired by his design, or back to my example a second ago, by page 16 of that blue book, their arm is going to be killing them. Okay, don't do it. And if the production guy says, well, that's not engineerable. So we really work as a closed cell team, and not closed cell like closed to the outside world, but they're really finite on a project and they build it over time. And as I think about one of the things that differentiates different consumer product, like when you see a BIC product, you should be able to recognize its design qualities and its ethos, the simplicity, the colorfulness, the creativity of it. It's one of the things that makes us stand out in like the back to school shop or in the store. When you go to that checkout and you see all those cool BIC lighters, they're very unique and iconic in their design. The BIC lighters in the MoMA and a number of other design museums around the world. So design's something that's not only important to us, but very much part of our DNA.
Yeah. No, it's interesting actually when you think of it, because you look at products, I don't know, like cars or anything that has like some type of shape or form over time. And a lot of times you look at old designs and you say, oh, how cool. Like it would be cool if that still was available, or, I don't know, sneakers and stuff like that. But BIC has been able to actually be very like stubborn up to the point of like actually being very loyal to your own legacy designs, if you like. So that's a really interesting thing.
Yeah. It doesn't mean we're not redesigning things. So that pen that you're holding in your hand, that's been redesigned I don't know how many times. Not on the outside. The consumer's never seen a change. But on the inside, we've reduced material for sustainability purpose. We added the hole in the pen cap for safety reasons. We added the hole in the barrel for mechanical function reasons. So there's a lot of design thrown in there that evolves, just not always that the consumer sees. That iconic crystal pen that you're holding or the BIC lighter hasn't changed since the beginning, and that's what makes it so impactful culturally in people's everyday life.
Well, and I think you're spot on, right? Which is that I think that the iconic design inspires or reinforces the trust that consumers have in these brands. And I think we've all seen, given the economic conditions around the world, consumers are continuing to say, we are looking for those trusted brands in these times, because I want to make sure that what I'm putting my money towards is something that I can trust and I know is going to deliver for me. So I think it makes all the sense in the world to continue to reinforce that iconic status of these brands and these products.
Yeah, we're synonymous, the BIC brand and those products are synonymous with value and in the economic times that we're living. Although I've been doing this for 20 years and every couple of years I end up saying something like in these economic times. So I have to wonder what that means. But yes, absolutely. Today we see people seeking both value from a value for money perspective and valued. And that valued is the brand, it's the connection, it's the experience. And the value is the value for money. It's 3,000 meters of writing for a pen, or 3,000 lights for a lighter, or a month and a half of shaving for one of our shavers. Those are all really things that when you go into the store and you see the little, the BIC logo, you're like, yeah, that makes sense. I'm going to acquire.
Yeah. Can you tell us more, because you dropped it, and I remember you'd mentioned it to me before about this acquisition that you did in the temporary tattoo space, which I personally didn't know about until you mentioned it to me.
It's something that I'm super, super passionate about. So about 10 years ago, we developed a temporary tattoo marker called Body Mark, which we still market around the world. And that was our first foray into temporary tattoos. And it allowed you, me, my kids, my wife, to draw on themselves in a way that was very safe, because doing it with permanent markers is not skin safe. So we had that first foray into it. And then I was looking for what the next evolution of our skin creative journey could be. And I came across this business started by two fantastic entrepreneurs, Tyler and Braden, these two brothers up in Toronto, who developed the Inkbox business. And the Inkbox business is a vegan, skin-safe ink that develops into your skin. And so you get a tattoo for about 2 weeks. It depends on the rate at which your skin fluffs off, but let's call it about 2 weeks. And we have 10,000 different tattoos in catalog, so I dare you to not find something that you fall in love with in that catalog. We have a custom engine on top of that, so you can send us like your favorite quote or saying or picture, and I've uploaded all sorts of stuff, and it's very fun. And I'm on a mission to allow people to express themselves on their skin however they want, in a way that's affordable, because of an Inkbox tattoo, $8, $9, $10, up to $20, without the problem of permanence. So, I have some permanent tattoos too, but not everything I want to keep on my skin. So if I'm, you're in Barcelona, so if I'm going to support the Barca at a key match, I'm going to put that on. We're going to have but I'm not going to have that for the rest of my life on my forearm. I might, but not particularly.
Yeah, Daniel would probably disagree. He probably would want to speak permanent.
It's inside.
I can have that conversation another day. But I absolutely love this business, and it's just one of the bricks in the ecosystem of skin creative that we're building. But it's a fabulous business, very social, entrepreneur. You go onto social media and you see how people react to their experience with Inkbox. And there's a lot of comments like, this allowed me to identify with this group, or this allowed me for the first time to bring this message to my identity, or I feel better because I put this quote on my arm for 2 weeks as I was going through my summer exams. There's some pretty poignant stories in there.
Interesting.
It's really, really powerful to hear that, to hear those stories from consumers directly. Gonzalve, I'm really fascinated to hear, just even in talking about Inkbox, but even in some of the other prior responses, you've alluded to the diversity of the portfolio that you manage under the BIC company brand. And I'm curious to understand, given that diversity, how does each product division, in essence, ultimately contribute to the overall success of the brand of BIC?
I think each one has to be positively reinforcing the whole. And what I mean by that, and going back to what I was saying earlier, every time you pick up a BIC product and that pen, it works from the first time you put the tip to the paper. That reinforces your understanding of value and quality and performance of all of our products, because one of the things that's quite specific about BIC is the BIC brand is on the vast, vast, vast majority of our products. Yes, we have other brands like Inkbox and like some others that we've recently acquired, but each one of those positive interactions with the brands, no matter which category, reinforces your understanding of both value and value. So when you go into the store and you're looking for that lighter to light the birthday candle, it was my son's birthday last week, and I was lighting candles. So those colors, well, I stand for joy and simplicity in everyday life for billions of consumers around the world. And yes, I also make a black lighter, white lighter, blue lighter, kind of the more classic colors, but you also have it in tons of fun colors and designs and sleeves and decors and stuff. So each one of those interactions, physical, visual, and sensorial, reinforces those positive messages with the brand. And all of the products that we make are valued. They have different price points. As I said, we still sell that sub 10, 15 cent shaver, and then we have some shavers above $2 a unit. But each one of those should bring joy and simplicity to the act of shaving or your everyday life in a way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm. And maybe can you run through briefly each division and understand a bit what's the strategic approach of every one of them? So we have writing, lighting. You'll know better than me.
No problem. So one of the things we did when we launched our Horizon plan at the end of 2020 was reframe and rename each of our three divisions to give them a new way of looking at things. So we took what was our writing division, we called it Human Expression. Why human expression? Because fundamentally, it's one of the most innate things about our species is the desire to communicate and express ourselves. In many ways, tattooing has been around prior to the pen. So expressing yourself on skin is key. And so we have that business. But we've brought the human expression business. So we still want to be a global leader, one of the biggest brands in writing, highlighting, coloring, creativity. And it was really about reconnecting with that desire and enabling people to have super high quality instruments to write and create every day. And we've seen tons of growth. We've reduced the ranges. We've been much more purposeful in what we launch and what we support and how we go to market with consumers. And back to school, really explaining why it's important and what's important, and then engaging not only with the student, but the teacher. So that's kind of the writing business. Then we have a digital writing platform with this fabulous brand of products called Rocketbook that we acquired. These are sustainable, reusable notebooks. So imagine all those notebooks you filled in your entire life. Now you could have just one, you write, you digitize, and you just wipe it away with a little bit of water, and it's infinitely reusable, so sustainable and contemporary. Then we have the skin creative business that we talked about a second ago with allowing people to express themselves on skin, and so much more. There's new chapters to be written in the human expression business. Then we have our second business, which was the lighter business, which now called Flame for Life. And why Flame for Life? Because the lighter has so many uses. Yes, lighting cigarettes and other things that you have every day around you, but also candles, religious candles, barbecue, outdoor, different. And that's just in some parts of the world. Now, we operate all over the world. Think in Brazil, where people use a large percentage of the products we use for hygiene and having cooking utensils and boiling water and finding other things to do with it. And so really it was giving the word essential a purpose in that portfolio of products. So Flame for Life. And then Blade Excellence, because we really make one of the best quality shaving instruments in the world, on par with the global leaders, and we wanted to recognize that. And so we've been driving that business forward and created a B2B business called BIC Blade Tech, where now we power also new, innovative, and disruptive brands with the best technology in the world, and been very pleased with that business. That's grown it's less than 2 years old, and it's growing quite rapidly. So that's another thing that we've been doing.
That's interesting, because I did hear recently that like the blades of shaving blades, like you really need very, 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 very specific manufacturing equipment to do them, no? Like that capability is super rare to find.
So there's very few companies in the world that make blades. And when you're at the pinnacle of this business, like we are, you are literally designing what we call the ultimate blade edge, which is the last 1/10 of a micron. So that's the last 1/800th the width of your hair at the blade edge, designing them atom by atom in its shape to get just the right mix between smoothness and sharpness, durability and shavability. And that's really where the art and the science come together. It's absolutely fascinating to go into those industrial plants and to watch, millions upon millions of blades being made every day to that level of specification so that we're guaranteeing the best possible shave for people.
So it's interesting to hear you talk about let's call it the more upstream part of the value chain. I'm actually curious to ask you about the downstream in terms of, and you referenced it when you were talking about the Blade Excellence business. How is your approach to route to market and specifically, I guess, e-commerce and digital, how has that evolved over the last few years?
Since I've been working, it's evolved tremendously because
every day.
Every day. The last few years have been interesting. As the technology accelerates more and more, you have to be choiceful. You can't do everything. I think that might be one of the traps that some are falling into, is trying to get every different channel, every website, everybody selling you that they have access to consumers. And we are definitely a brand and products for everyone. We want it to be globally available, or available in over 160 countries in the world. But it's also the quality of the distribution that really has to be excellent. So, you spend a ton of time designing these perfect displays for back to school. Well, you should be spending the same amount of time making the perfect web page for a front end, or working with your 1P partners on their way of putting I don't know about you, but nothing worse from a CPG guy. You go on to a website to acquire something and the picture is grainy, the packaging, you can't read any of the mentions, the content just isn't good, so I don't really know what I'm buying, the price matching is all over the place. Those are that's the science of our business, CPG, that's so important to get right no matter what the route to market is. And listen, we've got some countries where digital can be 10, 20 or more % of the business. There are other countries where it's less than 1 because we are a global country. But it's really important right now to be investing in tech and being at the forefront of all those things. I would be careful in not also investing in where you're still doing 80% of your business in many countries of the world. And those partners have been with us for 20, 30, 40 years. Those are extremely long-standing relationships, people that have been our gateway to the consumer, billions of consumers, and I value those relationships equally.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, as somebody who shaves every day, I really want to have like an amazing shaving experience. And you mentioned that you have like a more premium range where you have like up to 6 blades or 5+1 blades. Yep. What is that proposition for premium shaving, and in the other divisions, how are you approaching that more premium segment?
We do a lot of consumer work. And so it's your classic UNA focus group, but much more advanced today because with the digital tools that we have available. Listen, when I started working over 20 years ago in CPG, if you wanted to know what consumers thought of a product, you made a few million of them, you spent $500,000 to $3 million, you did a huge UNA in a big country, but at the end, your sample size was like 1,000 people.
Yeah.
Today, and it took 6 to 9 months. Today, I can go out and ask 10,000 live consumers a question about color, packaging, price architecture, whatever, almost instantly and globally. I love our ability to, because of technology, to break across barriers and therefore make sure, hey, am I still going to be culturally relevant? Am I making a shaver that works just as well for the way people shave in Tokyo as Barcelona as Houston? And if not, how should I be adapting the recipes and technology? And that's really, really fundamental to how we operate. And we have a team called MCI that does nothing but that. They act as our internal consulting engine on anything shopper, consumer, user, or prescriptor. And in each of those cases, for each of the businesses, it's a little bit different. But that's what leads to the introduction of technologies like our Easy Rinse technology in shave, or the Easy Reach technology in lighter, and some of the new tattoo technologies that we're talking about.
I'm actually really curious to hear, Gonzalve, with regards to, and you referenced it actually in one of your earlier responses around sustainability. And I'm curious to hear, what has BIC been doing recently with regards to, in essence, embedding sustainability into its practices across the portfolio that we've just talked about?
Well, at the heart of our company, sustainability's been here since the beginning, because when we started manufacturing crystal pens all those years ago, we were obsessed about how little material we could use. That was important not only from a cost perspective, but also from a sustainability perspective. Our first structured, communicated sustainability program was 2003, so well in advance of a lot of other people. And that was setting goals for ourselves. And then in 2018, I launched a new program, kind of the next evolution, called Writing the Future Together, where we took big, ambitious goals out to 2025 to really improve on 5 dimensions. We've added a 6th one more recently, but we wanted to give you some example. We wanted to be originally at 80% renewable energy across all of our operations. And now we actually exceeded that goal, and now we're targeting 100% by 2025. And we want to have 0 accidents at work. And we want to be engaging with all of our strategic suppliers, upstream, downstream, on their sustainability agendas, and making sure that they're engaging with us. And it's a win-win, because, as you well know, it's a partnership across these ecosystems. I can't bring recycled cardboard packaging to consumers if my cardboard suppliers don't want to make recycled cardboard. And so what we did is a couple of years ago, when we launched Horizon, we made 2 very big and ambitious commitments. The first one was we were going to get to 100% recycled, reusable, compostable, or other sustainable packaging by 2025. And we went from less than 30% to, at the end of 22, we've now exceeded 70%. We're well on our way to get to 100% by 2025. And that's been a huge investment in time and energy. But you can't imagine, back to that word passion, how passionate our team members are to execute this vision and bring it to life. And hundreds upon hundreds of ideas every month, because there's no silver bullet. You do this little bit by little bit. And then the second one, which is even more big and audacious, is to reduce by 50% the amount of non-virgin plastic we use in our products. Now, as you can imagine, making the volumes we make every day, that's a lot of R&D in new plastics, new processes, new manufacturing equipment, tons of new suppliers. And I'm so enthused by the lean in that many of our biggest suppliers have done with us, creating partnership programs, giving us first access to some of the materials that they've created. One of our female shaving products now has 40% recycled plastic coming from this really cool supplier called Avient, that allows us to really lean in there and make a big step change in one shot, which is rare. Normally it's smaller increments that have to be done. But that by 2030, we're going to get there, and that'll be a huge step in our journey. And then, of course, we've made different greenhouse gas reduction goals in line with the Paris agreements to be a good social citizen in that respect as well. So we're extremely engaged, and I would say that's from the very top of the organization, me, the board, and our different stakeholders, all the way through all of our team members and our partners, and we make sure that everybody's rowing in one direction on those.
Yeah, because it goes hand in hand with what you said before about getting your people that have passion for the brand and feel it like their own. No, up to a point, I guess the sustainability journey goes hand in hand with that. No,
exactly.
What about So we talked about like some future goals now in terms of sustainability. Looking at the industry more broadly, and it's very broad because I mean like FMCG, fast moving consumer goods, CPG, call it as you will. If you think of the next 10 years, how do you see it evolving? And I know this is a very broad question, but I'll ask you for a few strokes.
Let's start with sustainability because it's one of the biggest topics out there. I don't know whether we'll come to a set of KPIs because I think we could all agree today there's as many KPIs as there are people and consumers. But we'll start refining it to those things that make the biggest impact, which will be materials, processing, sourcing, protecting the earth, trees green, and pivoting to sustainable materials. So I think you're going to see some really big lean-ins on circularity. You're going to see some really big lean-ins on durability of products. So back to that 3,000 meters of writing, 1 year of writing, or 3,000 lights. It's single use is going to be harder and harder. Low number of uses is harder and harder. And people like us who have very light and long-lasting products are going to benefit and continue to innovate in that respect. The shopper angle of things is going to continue to evolve. Every year there's a new way of doing it. I'm not, even though this year's been a little bit lighter on Web3 because ChatGPT and AI has been the buzzword du jour. And I can't believe that we're, more than 20 minutes into a podcast and nobody had said ChatGPT yet. That's going to continue to be important, reducing the friction in shopping, and those of us, brands, companies working with the best retailers and the best partners in the world, I think are going to win because we're saving the consumer time, energy, and money, which is really important in today's world. But those brands that people are passionate about, that their values resonate with consumers, they're going to make all the difference.
Yeah, no, it's really it's interesting to hear you describe some of those trends, like you said, around the basically how single use will become almost in a way almost irrelevant for a lot of our categories in FMCG and with shopper as well. I think, like you said, reducing friction and at the same time giving people both comfort but also inspiration as they shop, I think is going to be super important. And not that it hasn't been, but I think it's just going to continue to grow in importance as well. Gonzalve, this has been both enlightening, but also inspiring, listening to you share a little bit of your perspective with regards to not just where things are today, but also where they're going, both for BIC, but also as an industry in whole. I have one final question. This is a question that we ask all of our guests, and I'm curious to hear your perspective. And if you could go back in time and you could give yourself one piece of advice when you first started.
How far back in time am I going?
Well, let's say the beginning of your professional career.
That's just a few days ago.
Yeah, no. But if you could go back to when you first started your career, and you could give yourself one piece of advice, given everything you've learned over the last few years, what would it be?
Can I give myself two pieces of advice?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So the two pieces of advice I would give to myself are you have one mouth and two ears and use them proportionately. Because when we're young, we think we know everything. We talk too much. We don't listen enough. And there's so many learnings to be taken from those around us. And the second is back to that word passion. I've always been passionate. I'm a passionate person by nature. I don't think I shared it enough with those around me when I started my career. It was like, I need to be a bit shy, or maybe I have the wrong answer. People will think X, Y, Z of me. I'm not envious or jealous, but I am inspired by the generations of today coming into the workforce who they wear their passions on their heart sleeves. They don't hide it at all. And I find that inspiring.
This was Gonzalve Bich, CEO of BIC. Efrain, what are your key takeaways from this conversation? There's a lot to take home, I think.
There's a lot to unpack for sure. I mean, I think when you speak with somebody of the caliber, but also the breadth of responsibility like Gonzalve, I think there's just a lot of learnings in there. For me, what sticks out first and foremost was I loved how he talked about how their mission, which is bringing joy and simplicity in everyday life, is critical to everything that they do across the value chain. And I think that was really evident in hearing Gonzalve talk about everything that BIC is doing across their product divisions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that they have a very clear approach, if you like. Like he talked about being true to brand ethos, experiences that resonate with consumers, and also having innovation at heart. It's very clear, like having a very clear North Star, and also the fact that they hire people that are passionate about the brand, so to make sure that that people across all levels bring ideas to the table. No?
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's really telling that, Gonzalve mentioned it at the beginning, and I think it's also very telling that, everything that they do starts with the consumer. And that goes from like how he chooses to allot his time as CEO, but it's also evident in regards to how he talked about the different product divisions as well, which is that, he mentioned that it's not about writing per se, but it's about expressing yourself through communication. And he talked about Flame for Life and thinking about everything that, that iconic BIC lighter and those kinds of products can do for people in regards to helping them light their fires and do all sorts of other things. So I think it's really interesting to hear how, he is in essence role modeling the behavior that he wants to see throughout the organization in terms of making sure that everything is rooted in consumer.
Yeah, I like the thing of Flame for Life, because come to think about it, and everybody needs fire in their life, right? That's what actually made people evolve, to be able to, like the discovery of fire was obviously a game changer when it comes to human evolution. So
yeah. And we can't forget again just how iconic the design of their products is as well, and not just iconic, but also in terms of like the value part of the equation as well, right? He talked about value and valued in terms of product and experience. And I was blown away by, the fact he mentioned that, each one of those big crystal pens that you're holding in your hand is able to, in essence, deliver 3,000 meters of writing to somebody. That's mind blowing to me.
Yeah. I like the numbers that he had top of mind around that, and around that as well. Actually, the impact of sustainability on the industry, which I think that they're really like going into. I mean, probably also their products are very plastic heavy ultimately, so they probably need to address that challenge. But I think that they have they're certainly hitting their objectives, when it comes to.
Well, and I think that they've set some pretty lofty goals, and as Gonzalve mentioned, they are well on their way to achieving those, right? In terms of things like, for example, like 100% of using 100% recyclable, reusable packaging by the year 2025, and being over 70% there already. Yeah. So it's inspiring, right? And I think they're helping to lead the conversation for the industry in that regard.
Yeah. Well, hope that our audience was equally inspired by the show. If you've enjoyed the show, make sure that you recommend it to a friend, a colleague that you think can benefit from the knowledge that we get from these conversations. As mentioned at the beginning, would be great if you could leave us a review. Hope you enjoyed the show, and see you in the next episode of the FMCG Guys. Have a great day.